Congratulations! You have been approved for participation in the ADX step-down program. Your current level, 6, Administrative Maximum. Objective: demonstrate sustained adjustment conducive to lower security placement. They slide the paper through the slot at 0600. You don't touch it right away. The paper smells like the hallway, recycled air and antiseptic. You read the words 3 times before they mean anything. Step down. It sounds like freedom if you've forgotten what that word costs. You know the rumors. Men spend years stepping nowhere. Behavioral compliance, cognitive reorientation, group therapy through a grate. But in a place where nothing changes, even the illusion of movement is oxygen. You fold the paper in half and place it under your mattress. You don't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because the word program sounds almost human. The step-down program, SDP, was initiated in 2009 by the Federal Bureau of Prisons to create a structured pathway for inmates housed in the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum, ADX Florence, to transition toward lower security facilities. The SDP consists of 4 progressive levels emphasizing personal responsibility, social interaction, and cognitive behavioral therapy. Narration, analytical bridge. On paper, the step-down program is the Bureau's answer to decades of criticism. The promise that even within America's most restrictive prison, rehabilitation is still possible. It exists at the intersection of 2 contradictory imperatives: containment and reformation. In reality, it is less a ladder and more a mirror, one that shows how far the system must bend language to call its own reflection progress. Level 6. Administrative Maximum Custody. Objective: establish compliance through consistent institutional adjustment. Interaction: none. Duration: indefinite. You've been at level 6 for 4 years. That means 23 hours in the cell, 1 hour in the cage. Communication is through glass, food through a slot, ideas through memory. When they tell you there's a next level, you laugh. Not out loud, that would count as disruptive behavior. You mark time by the sound of the meal slot. Rehabilitation begins with learning silence. Inmates may participate in self-directed cognitive restructuring modules and controlled movement exercises within range of staff supervision. Self-directed means alone. Cognitive restructuring means worksheets about anger. Controlled movement means walking in a slightly bigger cage while a guard watches. They measure your progress in paperwork. Every completed packet moves you closer to nowhere. But you still fill them out because that's what progress looks like here. Ink in boxes. The Bureau of Prisons presented the step-down program as a triumph of evidence-based correctional philosophy. Publicly, it was marketed as the humane evolution of the Supermax system, a pipeline from isolation to reintegration. Reports cite cognitive behavioral models and behavioral incentives. In practice, each step is separated by years of paperwork, vague psychological evaluations, and the subjective discretion of staff. The program's success rate, according to a 2018 BOP internal audit, is defined not by measurable rehabilitation but by absence of disciplinary infractions over 24 months. In a place without human contact, good behavior is simply the behavior of ghosts. They give you a workbook called Cognitive Restructuring for Inmates. The cover has a cartoon brain made of gears. The first question asks, what triggers your maladaptive responses? You write, fluorescent light. You erase it and put, anger. The next page says, imagine a scenario in which you successfully manage your emotions. You close your eyes. All you see is a blank room with the hum of air vents. You write, I am already doing that. Asterisk assessment criteria, emotional regulation, interpersonal awareness, acceptance of responsibility, cognitive insight, behavioral stability. Asterisk. You meet the psychologist once every quarter through a reinforced glass panel. She speaks in phrases you recognize from the workbook: cognitive distortion, impulse mapping, affective recalibration. You nod at the right times. You know how this works. It's not therapy. It's translation. She translates your silence into improvement. You translate her questions into stay calm. At the end, she smiles and writes something on her clipboard. That's how you know you've passed. Each level of the step-down program introduces limited socialization. By level 4, inmates may share a recreation area with one other participant, separated by metal fencing under constant supervision. The Bureau calls this structured peer interaction. Former participants call it talking through wire. One inmate told investigators from the Office of the Inspector General, "They tell you to practice communication, but you're not allowed to move your hands. You're not allowed to stand too close to the fence. You can't look at the cameras. So you end up talking to the floor. That's what communication means here. You make it to level 5 after 26 months. The notice says, you have demonstrated positive adjustment and a commitment to prosocial behavior. All you did was stop asking for anything. You learned the rhythm of submission, not from fear, but from calculation. If you show no need, they call it stability. If you show need, they call it regression. So you practice stability until it becomes indistinguishable from death. To the Bureau, the step-down program serves dual functions. Public relations, proof that ADX is not a warehouse for human beings but a laboratory of behavioral change. Control, a reward hierarchy that keeps inmates compliant under the illusion of mobility. Every promotion to a new level comes with increased monitoring, more evaluations, more paperwork, a bureaucratic paradox. The closer one moves toward freedom, the tighter the surveillance becomes. In the system's logic, rehabilitation equals obedience. Level 4, intermediate transitional phase. Goal: strengthen self-management and demonstrate readiness for communal re-entry through participation in therapeutic group settings. They escort you to a room the size of your cell. For chairs, bolted to the floor. A television plays a program about conflict resolution. You're told to discuss what you see. You nod. Another man nods, the counselor nods. For 10 minutes, the room fills with the sound of breathing and fluorescent hum. At the end, she says, "Good session, gentlemen." You realize she means it. Progress is happening on paper. The Bureau of Prisons' own documentation admits that inmates who graduate from the step-down program are often transferred to medium-security facilities under special monitoring. Within 12 months, many are reclassified back into higher control units due to failure to adjust. In bureaucratic language, this means the person behaved normally in an environment that no longer made sense. Rehabilitation, in this context, is a closed circuit, a way of proving the system is capable of mercy without ever relinquishing control. Custody status, interaction, privileges, duration. Level 6, administrative maximum, none. 1 hour recreation, indefinite. Level 5, pre-transitional, minimal. Worksheets, monitored exercise, 18 to 30 months. Level 4, transitional, limited. Group sessions, reading materials, 12 to 24 months. Level 3, step-down review, conditional, communal meal once weekly, 12 months. Level 2, pre-transfer, restricted social contact, possible facility reclassification, variable. Level 1, general population, standard, full interaction, indefinite, 6 steps, no guarantees. Every level requires proof of progress that only the institution can define. Inmates learn the language of progress because there's no other way out. You keep your cell spotless. You recite the anger management phrases. You complete every workbook. Still, each morning you wake in the same cell under the same light. The only visible difference is the label on the clipboard outside your door. You've stepped down on paper, not in space. You begin to wonder if the levels exist only to keep the staff from admitting the truth. No one leaves level 6. They just learn to describe it in more positive language. You stop counting the days. You start counting the tests. They appear without announcement. A new worksheet, a new reflection prompt, a new questionnaire that asks how you feel about your progress. There are right answers and you know them by now. You write motivated, accountable, hopeful. You imagine the words glowing in green on a screen somewhere, flagged as compliant. Sometimes you wonder if there's a person reading them or only a program scanning for the absence of aggression. You have learned the grammar of the step-down program, and its first rule, language is behavior. They move you into a transition unit, 2 cells facing each other through reinforced glass. You can see another inmate, a gray figure pacing his 10 feet of concrete. The manual calls this structured proximity. You call it the mirror. You study him as he studies you. Each motion reflects your own. He mouths words you don't catch. You mouth them back. For a moment you feel almost human. Then the cameras pivot and the illusion fractures. You write in your journal a privilege of level 4. Connection attempt recorded as behavioral variance. The counselors call the next phase emotional stabilization. It's a series of sessions through intercoms, 30 minutes each week. You sit on the metal stool while a voice behind the wall reads from a script. Let's talk about triggers. How do you recognize escalation? The word triggers means the part of you that still reacts. You are supposed to identify it, name it, then remove it. Each session ends the same way. Good work. Remember, calm is safety. Calm is also invisibility. You become expert at it. You begin to hear sounds you can't locate. Not delusions, echoes. Doors closing 4 corridors away. A guard humming. Someone laughing through a vent. For years you have lived inside silence so complete that now each sound feels like invasion. You write it down carefully. Auditory sensitivity. Improving awareness. That is the correct phrasing. Never I hear things. You're learning to code your own deterioration in the dialect of progress. At level 4 you are allowed to attend group twice a month. You sit in individual cages facing a counselor. Each cage has a headset and a microphone. The topic, empathy and consequences. You listen to the recording of a family describing a crime, not yours, someone's, and you must write a paragraph about accountability. The others read their pieces aloud. The counselor praises insightful responses. You realize there is no empathy here, only performance. But performance is currency. You spend it carefully. Nights stretch thin. The lighting never fully dims. It falls to 30%, the official sleep illumination. The body forgets when to rest. You start dividing the hours into cycles. 2 for stillness, 2 for thought, 1 for breathing practice. It becomes ritual. If you fail to perform it, anxiety climbs your throat like static. Somewhere deep inside, you know the ritual isn't healing you. It's the system running through you, embedding itself until obedience feels like comfort. Every 90 days comes the interview. A psychologist, a unit manager, and a lieutenant ask the same questions in the same order. Any disciplinary issues? Describe your emotional regulation strategies. How do you manage frustration? You recite the answers. They nod. The form fills itself. Afterward, you return to your cell and realize you've begun asking yourself those same questions before sleeping, as though rehearsing for the next evaluation. That's when you understand. They don't need to monitor you anymore. You've internalized the interviewer. At level 3, the walls widen by inches. You get an extra hour in recreation, and the fence ceiling allows sunlight. For the first time in years, the light feels foreign, too bright, too hot. Your eyes water. You look up and mistake the contrails for cracks in the sky. The counselor later calls this reacclimation difficulty. You call it proof that confinement has changed your senses permanently. You start wearing the issued cap even indoors, a small shade, a way to filter the world back to manageable size. There's a poster in the hallway outside the counseling room. Blue letters on white background. Progress is a process. You stare at it during escort. You think about the men who never leave the program, the ones who repeat levels for a decade because they fail to demonstrate insight. You imagine progress as a circle painted on the floor. You've been walking it so long that it now feels like forward motion. Privileges are rationed like medication. More recreation, 1 extra call, a book of your choice. You learn to budget emotion the same way. Never too much gratitude, seen as manipulation. Never too little, marked as detachment. Each expression is a transaction. Each sentence a test of balance. After a while, your own tone feels rehearsed even when you whisper to yourself. You begin to sense the cameras differently. At first they were eyes. Now they're clocks. Every blink means time is still moving. You catch yourself performing small gestures. adjusting posture, wiping the sink, for no reason except to appear stable. Even alone, you are acting. That realization hits harder than any punishment. Surveillance has become selfhood. One morning, the counselor says your name with a trace of warmth. You're being considered for level 2. The phrase feels dangerous, hope is destabilizing. Your heart rate spikes, palms sweat. You steady your breathing the way the manual teaches. Back in the cell, you sit on the floor, repeating the word quietly. Considered. It doesn't mean approved. It means the system has noticed you, and that's enough to make you tremble. Sleep brings fragments. Corridors merging with deserts, voices calling from vents. In the dream you walk freely, but every door opens to another cell. Sometimes the counselor appears, clipboard glowing in the dark, asking if you feel remorse. You wake with the answer already formed. Yes, consistently. You wonder if even your subconscious is following the protocol. In the next session, the counselor instructs a breathing drill over the intercom. Inhale calm, exhale tension. Her voice bounces off the concrete, delayed by milliseconds. Creates an echo so it sounds like two people saying the words, her and someone inside your head. You begin to prefer the echo. It feels more real than silence. Weeks later, a file appears on the slot. Behavioral summary. Eligible for step-down review. You read it like a sacred text. Every line describes you as if you were a case study. Demonstrates effective consistency. Shows adaptive compliance. Reduced incidence of self-isolation. You know none of those phrases mean freedom. They mean predictable. Predictability is the final form of obedience. You realize you no longer fantasize about leaving ADX. You fantasize about a perfect evaluation. A day with no deviations, no internal noise. When the guard passes, you find yourself smiling reflexively. It's not submission. It's maintenance. You've learned to maintain yourself as record. Smells begin to register again. Bleach, metal, dust. Each scent sparks memory, but the memories misfire. You can't locate their origins. Your past has blurred into the architecture. The handbook calls this contextual confusion during resocialization. You call it amnesia by design. The review board sits behind a long table. 3 faces, unreadable. One reads your file. Another observes your posture. Questions flow in neutral tones. If released to a lower custody level, how will you manage interpersonal conflict? You answer with textbook calm. They nod, satisfied. You catch your reflection in the polished tabletop. You're mimicking their expressions perfectly. That's when you know the program has worked. After the hearing, you expect news. None comes. Days pass. Routine continues unchanged. You start repeating the interview questions to yourself, keeping the muscle of compliance alive. Eventually, you forget whether you ever moved down a level. Everything feels like level 6 with better lighting. In the quarterly report, the psychologist writes, subject displays stable affect, cooperative demeanor, low aggression potential. Recommend continued observation. You imagine that phrase carved into stone somewhere. It sounds almost like an epitaph. You fold the report carefully and slide it under the mattress beside the first one. The notice that began it all. Paper to paper, circle to circle. You wake to the same hum, but something is different. Your door bears a new placard, Level 2, Pre-transfer status. No announcement, no celebration. Just a silent upgrade, stamped in bureaucratic font. The air feels the same, cold, dry, filtered through vents that never turn off. But a word has changed, and words here are architecture. You read it again and again until it loses meaning. Pre-transfer, not transfer. You are always before something. Rehabilitation as geometry. The cell has sharper corners now, or maybe your perception has. Every angle seems deliberate, measured to the inch. A psychologist once told you that the architecture of ADX is evidence-based. Every surface tested for resistance, visibility, compliance. The design itself is therapy. You look at the floor and think, they built the walls first, then wrote the program to fit them. They tell you, you're close. That phrase circulates among inmates like currency. It means nothing specific, just an assurance that movement exists. but close implies a door. And when you believe there is a door, you behave as though one exists. That's how the step-down program works, hope as a behavioral modifier. You perform compliance not because you believe in redemption, but because you've been trained to respond to proximity. The exit interview. The counselor appears behind the glass. You've made significant progress. How do you feel about reintegration? You answer, prepared. She smiles. It is the same smile she's used for years. Professional, detached, almost kind. Any concerns? You hesitate, then say, noise. She writes something, probably sensitivity to stimulation. You don't tell her that noise now feels like proof that something is alive. At level 2, you are escorted to a day room once a week. It has windows, real ones, thick glass but clear. You can see the outline of the Rockies. You thought mountains would move you. They don't. The landscape looks two-dimensional, like a photograph taped outside the frame. You stare until your reflection overlays the view. It looks natural there, your face, floating over distant snow. There are 4 of you now. Chairs arranged in a semicircle. A facilitator sits with a folder labeled Interpersonal Dynamics. Today we'll discuss empathy, she says. The man to your left repeats lines from the manual verbatim. You nod at the right intervals. The facilitator beams, excellent engagement. You realize engagement here means repetition. Empathy is defined as accurate recitation of policy. After the session, you are returned to your cell. You feel nothing, which is exactly the goal. Every action is logged. Every expression quantified. A chart outside your door reads, category, score, cooperation, 5/5, responsiveness, 5/5, emotional stability, 5/5, perfect scores, perfect stillness. Perfection here is indistinguishable from absence. From the recreation yard you hear a faint noise, engines, maybe a road beyond the compound. It triggers a memory so immediate it feels foreign. The sound of traffic. You imagine people stopping at lights, radios playing, someone cursing softly at delay. Feels like fiction. You look up. A plane crosses the rectangle of sky. For a second, you swear it's silent. Then you realize the hum of ventilation has swallowed the world again. Weeks later, a memo slides under your door. Inmate #___ approved for step-down completion review. You sit on the floor, the paper on your knees. The font is the same as every other form, but this one is rumored to mean release from ADX custody. You fold it carefully, place it beside the others under the mattress. The archaeology of your own conditioning. You whisper the phrase aloud. It doesn't sound human. It sounds processed. They escort you to a small room with a table, 3 officers, and a laptop. A presentation plays. Photos of other facilities, group yards, dining halls. This is what you can expect in general population. One officer says, more freedom, more responsibility. You nod, but the images don't compute. The colors look artificial, the space is chaotic. You imagine trying to stand in one without a wall close enough to touch. They ask if you have questions. You say, where do I stand during meals? They exchange looks. One writes a note. You receive a manual, Transition Readiness Workbook. Each page begins with I will. I will respect staff. I will respond appropriately. I will avoid conflict. It reads like a prayer. You memorize it. At night you recite it under your breath until the words detach from meaning and become rhythm. The same rhythm as your heart. Days pass. No transfer. You ask during rounds. Pending review, they say. You stop asking. Some men wait months. Others years. The system moves at the pace of paperwork, not time. You practice patience. The final behavioral competency. A new officer drops a tray too hard. The clang jolts through you. Before you think, you've moved back to the corner automatic defensive posture. He stares. You force a smile, hands open. He shrugs and walks away. Later, you realize your pulse didn't slow for an hour. The manual never mentioned what to do when instinct contradicts compliance. You request a mirror. They issue a small polished steel plate. Your reflection bends at the edges, features distorted like melted wax. You study it daily, rehearsing expressions. Neutral, calm, attentive. You want to make sure the muscles still remember. Some days the face responds, other days it lags behind. You note it in your journal, latency in self-recognition increasing. Even your thoughts now read like a report. Comes without warning. Pack up. You're moving. No destination given. You fold your clothes, collect papers, line them neatly on the bed. Each movement deliberate, ritualized. You're afraid of missing something you no longer need. As you wait, you feel lightheaded. It's not joy, it's disorientation. You've lived so long inside control that unstructured motion feels like falling. They cuff you, chain you, place you on a bus with tinted windows. The seat vibrates as the engine starts. Outside, the landscape slides by, real movement after years of simulation. It feels accelerated, violent, impossible. Your eyes water again. You look at the mountains fading behind and think, that place contained me, and now it travels with me. The gates open to another prison. Lower fences, voices in the air, sunlight touching the yard. You step off the bus. A sergeant points, directing you to intake. You follow. Men move freely within boundaries, talking, laughing, shouting. You flinch at every sound. Someone bumps your shoulder. You apologize automatically, though you've done nothing wrong. They assign you a bunk in a shared cell. Your cellmate introduces himself. You reply, acknowledged. Before correcting, sorry. Pleased to meet you. He laughs. You don't. At night, his breathing keeps you awake. You time each inhale, each exhale, waiting for silence that never arrives. Your mind whispers, you are off protocol. A counselor visits within the week. How's the adjustment? You choose words carefully. Structured. Challenging. She smiles. That's normal. You know it isn't. Normal doesn't mean what it used to. Normal is a file category. When she leaves, you write in your notebook, rehabilitation complete. Subject retains operational framework. You close the book gently, as if tucking the program into rest. Months later, you're allowed in the yard unescorted. You walk in circles out of habit. No one tells you to. You just do. The sky above feels heavier now, as if gravity learned your routine and refuses to let go. You stop, close your eyes, and for a moment, you can still hear the hum of the ventilation system, faint, perfect, endless. Some nights, the guards find you sitting on your bunk, staring at the wall. They ask if you're okay. You nod. You always nod. In the morning, you volunteer for every assignment. Keep your area spotless. Avoid conflict. They mark your record. Model inmate. You mark your own record silently. Subject stable under continued observation. You no longer know who's writing whom. Officially, Level 1 has no name. Unofficially, it's freedom. But freedom here means operating the program without supervision. It means living the curriculum out of habit. When you wake before dawn and organize your belongings by symmetry, when you answer every question with calm precision, when you measure each breath for consistency, that's Level 1. You are free to perform forever. Weeks later, you receive mail from a former counselor, a survey asking about your experience in the step-down program. How has the program impacted your rehabilitation? You stare at the line, pen hovering. After a long time, you write, I am stable. You sign your name carefully, all capital letters. The letters look like fences. According to BOP data, the step-down program has reduced the number of inmates in prolonged isolation by over 50% since implementation. Inmates who complete the program demonstrate increased adjustment to lower custody levels and reduced disciplinary incidents. Adjustment is not recovery. Compliance is not healing. You can teach a body to move again, but you cannot make it remember why. You sit by the window of your new cell. Outside, the yard hums with noise, laughter, motion. You feel it pressing against you like wind through glass. The clock on the wall ticks once, twice. You hadn't realized you'd missed that sound. You whisper the final lesson of the step-down program. Freedom is just another level. The hum fades. Silence fills the space where language used to be. The ADX step-down program remains active as the Bureau of Prisons' primary rehabilitation pathway for Level 6 inmates. Its official goal is to prepare individuals for safe return to general population. The measure of success is continued compliance. This has been Shadow of Justices. The search for truth continues.